I'm going to give the quote from Bioware studio manager Casey Hudson here in just a second, but I do want to start off by saying a lot has happened in the past year. We're now just about a year out from the announcement of Anthem at last year's E3. The dust on Mass Effect Andromeda is finally starting to settle, and I think we could all use with a little bit of sensibility when it comes to the future of Bioware as a studio. It's been a while since I've had a little sit-down informal chat with you all, so that's what I'm here to do. Casey Hudson released a revised vision statement for what he and the team over at Bioware see as their plan going forward for the sort of games that Bioware is going to be making. I think it's very interesting, so I wanted to discuss it today, but I just want to start off by saying, if you're excited for Anthem, if you're maybe a little bit skeptical over Anthem, I can see both sides of it. I've moved into both of those spheres, so to speak, in the year since Anthem has been officially confirmed. And if you're just looking for a little bit of, I hate to use the term common sense because good sense is anything but common these days, but if you just want like a grounded view, trying to weigh pros and cons and see both sides of things, not just on Anthem, but on the future of Bioware as a whole, I think it's time for one of those little chats. I think Casey Hudson's announcement of the new mission statement is the perfect time to do that. So I do want to say hello and welcome to the Exalted March. Today we are going to be talking about Bioware's new mission statement. We're going to be talking about some of the info that Casey Hudson did officially confirm for Anthem. I guess we're going to be talking a little bit about Dragon Age as well, but before we get to all that, let's go ahead and start with what the man himself actually said. So Casey Hudson posted a new blog post on the BioWare blog talking about the revised vision statement for BioWare as a studio. So the new vision statement is as follows, quote, "We create worlds of adventure, conflict, and companionship that inspire you to become the hero of your own story." End quote. Or I'm sorry, the hero of your story. I want to make sure I got that quote correctly. We create worlds of adventure, conflict, and companionship that inspire you to become the hero of your story. So that is the official new vision statement for BioWare, which actually got me thinking, what was the old vision statement exactly for BioWare? So if you're curious, I don't know, I guess they just haven't gotten around to updating the website yet. I don't know if anyone's told Casey this, but the old vision statement is still up on the About page for BioWare.com. And if you're curious, at least what looks to be the mission statement or the vision statement is right at the top of their About page, and it says, still at this point of me recording this, BioWare's vision is to create, deliver, and evolve the most emotionally engaging games in the world. So not bad either way. I do want to kind of break apart and analyze the new vision statement that Casey Hudson posted because I do think it's telling. I mean, it all sounds nice, as most vision statements do, but he goes out of his way to say that each word is carefully chosen, and I definitely believe him on that. So I'm going to include a link in the description so you can go and read his blog post for himself, and he kind of lays out why they chose to structure the vision statement as they did. So he kind of touches on how important it is to create worlds, not just to tell story, but to create worlds. He talks about what worlds of companionship mean. For instance, sometimes that's you and your friends, like in Star Wars: The Old Republic. Sometimes, like in Dragon Age and Mass Effect, it's the fictional party members that you have. Either way, he talks about those worlds being populated with companionship. He does go on to talk a little bit about Anthem and what we can expect, what we can expect in light of this new vision statement. And I will get to Anthem in a second, I promise. But I want to kind of delve in a little bit on this mission statement and what I think it means. So there's clearly an emphasis on world building. It's the first line in the vision statement. We create worlds. Now, this is really something that I've been thinking about recently. I'm actually now working on sort of a Mass Effect 1 retrospect, and which hopefully will be coming at some point in the future on the channel. But one of the distinctions that I thought was important was the difference between setting and story, because those are two really key differences. A story is, what happened, but the setting is the world and the backdrop and perhaps some underlying lore and factions and some of your, science and science fiction, some of your, the rules of your magical elements in a fantasy setting, etc. World building is a different emphasis than storytelling. So, for instance, I think one good example of this that most gamers would be familiar with is Bethesda is phenomenal at world building. And I'm not saying that Bethesda is not good at storytelling, because I think Bethesda is actually underrated when it comes to telling stories. I think Bethesda is underrated when it comes to characters, as a matter of fact. But by the way, I might have more to say on that in the future as well. Stay tuned. But world building as an emphasis to me is a departure from what Bioware has typically been known for. I mean, their old vision statement said emotionally engaging, and I'm not saying that world building is not emotionally engaging, but the number one emphasis on characters and story, I don't know if that's there in this vision statement. I mean, they mention companionship, but that's not the same thing as building really engaging or emotionally engaging characters, which I think has always been a hallmark of Bioware games of old. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I love Bethesda games. So, for instance, I love a world that's huge and expansive, and maybe the central narrative isn't as strong, but you can sort of make your own story through your actions. Maybe we do want to ask, however, is BioWare still in the business of storytelling chiefly? Are they still going to be making strong central narratives into their games? Or is world building, and as Casey Hudson puts it, as the new BioWare vision statement puts it, is becoming the hero of your story, sort of sidestepping central narratives and saying, okay, the actions that you take as the player in the game, that's the story. Because that is the type of story. What I'm afraid of is, do they consider grinding for loot my story, right? Because sometimes you hear developers and publishers talk about that. Well, this is the story that the player is telling by the actions that they take in the game, right? Is unlocking new gear going to be part of my story? Because that's not what I think of when I think of an emotionally engaging story. So I don't know if we have the clarity yet on how they're going to implement this. It's nice that the word story is in there, but become the hero of your story. What does that mean exactly? Is there going to be a strong, crafted, central narrative that's created by very talented writers? Or is it going to be a very, very blank slate with minimal crafted narrative that I'm mostly filling in sort of with my imagination of what I think I'm accomplishing by, unlocking a new area of the map or getting new gear? Time will tell. We don't know yet. And I'm not saying that I don't like blank slate, big open worlds that are, expansive, that you can kind of fill in yourself. So that's just kind of my thoughts in general. Is this still going to be the strong central narrative crafted by really great writers that we've come to expect from BioWare? Time will tell. Now, one thing, again, before we get to Anthem, I know everybody loves the Anthem stuff. I promise we're going to get to Anthem here in just a couple of minutes, but something that I think a lot of people are kind of missing here. I think a few people have missed the point. I don't know. I think maybe a couple of people have picked up on this. Casey Hudson said something in his blog post. He talked about other teams in BioWare and what other teams are working on potentially. And he said, we also have teams, and this is a quote from the blog post, quote, we also have teams envisioning future BioWare games, and they're designing approaches that are different from Anthem, including one that's very Dragon Age, end quote. So I think a lot of people meant for that to mean Dragon Age 4, since that's the Dragon Age game that we all sort of know is coming. Regardless of how acknowledged it's been officially, we kind of all know that Dragon Age 4 is coming. But my take on that was very different. When he said, including one that's very Dragon Age. Well, something that's very Dragon Age isn't really the same thing as Dragon Age. I mean, maybe we're splitting hairs here about what's confirmed and what's not, or what's announced and what's not. But to me, when he said something that's very Dragon Age, I took it to mean something that is like Dragon Age, but not Dragon Age. So to me, I felt like that was a tease, a sort of a semi-tease, if not almost like a subtle confirmation that BioWare is working on a new intellectual property. I haven't seen as many people go down that path. I think most people are just saying, oh, this is great. He's acknowledging, Dragon Age 4, etc. I kind of feel like Dragon Age 4 is out of the bag at this point. Whether it's considered officially acknowledged or announced or not, we kind of know Dragon Age 4 is happening. To me, when he said something that's very Dragon Age, I took that to mean perhaps a new intellectual property that's a fantasy IP. Right? I mean, We don't know exactly the future state of Mass Effect. I don't want to get into the future state of Mass Effect in this video, but we know that right now, BioWare obviously has a new IP coming out called Anthem, and that's going to be their new effort in the science fiction standpoint. Dragon Age is obviously not done. We've still got Dragon Age 4 and potentially more games after that, but maybe there's space for a new intellectual property that's, a different sort of fantasy, maybe a darker fantasy, maybe more of a high fantasy, maybe something that we've never seen before. I might be reading too much into this. I just thought that the wording was interesting, something including one that's very Dragon Age. To me, I took that to mean something that's like Dragon Age, but not Dragon Age. Hit the comments down below. Tell me if you think I'm crazy or if you think I'm onto something, and we'll figure it out together. Okay, finally, let's talk about Anthem. Casey Hudson talks about Anthem in this. He addresses some of the concerns that people have had. And, I actually thought he did it in a really earnest way. I thought the tone of this was pretty down to earth. I think he's trying to reckon with the criticisms head on. He mentions at one point, people don't want to play with random strangers sometimes. What if I have friends that I don't happen to play games with? Or what if I just like to be the one who's in control of the story? Isn't multiplayer going to water down the story and get in the way? So the fact that he's acknowledging these head on is positive. And he says that as a player, he worries about these things too. He wants to, as the vision statement says, he wants players to be able to become the hero of their story. But what he is ultimately saying in this blog post is, yeah, I hear all of that, but we're doing multiplayer anyway. I don't want to be reductive towards his statement, and I don't want to try and hammer all the nuance out of it. I appreciate the fact that he's trying to communicate with nuance, but in this instance, I think there does need to be a little bit of a summary that sort of more succinctly puts together what he's saying. He's saying, we hear your concerns about strong story-driven narrative experiences in multiplayer, and essentially he's saying, don't worry, we're just going to do it anyway. I appreciate the ambition. I think for a long time, people have been, including Bioware, and I'll get to that in a second, I think that it has been a goal of developers before to say, we're going to do great storytelling and great multiplayer, and we're going to put them together. So I give Casey Hudson credit for acknowledging these concerns head on. I think it's great that he's trying to assuage people's concerns. I do think that he is guilty a little bit of trying to explain over the concerns. And what I mean by explain over the concerns is that if you're someone who is thoughtful and careful and proficient in forming explanations, you can sometimes use language in a really precise way to kind of just not necessarily get around criticism, but just kind of go over them. They're not actually addressed because they might still be problematic, but as far as the way he's framing this issue, he's just sort of saying don't worry, our ambitions are lofty enough that we'll overcome these challenges, which they might. I have no knowledge of how well things are going for Anthem, and maybe this is a statement of confidence from Casey in the team and how well they're doing. Maybe there's a build of Anthem that's out right now that he just played that he thinks is revolutionary, and he really is about to deliver on everything that he says he is. But I can't take that as a given. Right, as someone who's asking questions about this, I don't like to ever use the word journalist when I describe myself, but as a commentator on these things, I can't take what Casey is saying at face value necessarily. It's not that I don't believe him, but I have to base my prognostications, whatever they might be, based on evidence. And so I think a good piece of evidence on this sort of thing is, what has BioWare done before in this space? It's not like BioWare has never tried to do story-driven experience plus multiplayer, because they have. I've been a player of Star Wars The Old Republic, SWTOR, since it came out, I think, 2011. Now, I think it launched in 2011. I probably started playing in 2012, and I've kept a subscription with a couple of gaps. I've kept a subscription basically all that time. Played through all of, except the most recent expansions for it. So I know firsthand how BioWare does with an attempt at really strong BioWare storytelling in a multiplayer setting, in a multiplayer world. They're okay at it. Really, if you play The Old Republic like I do, you should be able, this too. Not bad. There are times when I felt like I was playing something that could have been KOTOR 3. And then there are other times when it's a mess, and when The immersion of being in a Star Wars world, for instance, is broken by the fact that so much of the armor looks ridiculous and people, the crowding of players in shared world spaces, to me, breaks immersion. I know some people are going to say that I'm crazy and that I just shouldn't play MMOs if I don't like that sort of thing, but inherently, when you are in a shared space with other players, in the way that they're not NPCs, so they don't behave in a lore-specific way or in a story-specific way, and you can call me a stickler about this stuff if you want, but to me, that level of immersion in a fictional world is important, and when you have other players who wear stupid armor and jump around and keep throwing the stupid snowballs at you in the Old Republic, when you're trying to have this serious role-playing experience, it is a little immersion breaking. It's also immersion breaking when you have, high ping rates and, lag, even though your internet connection is great. It's immersion breaking when there's, too many damn loot boxes. And by the way, the Old Republic has a serious loot box problem. Okay, if you want to know how BioWare is going to handle randomized, stuff that you pay for, and then you get a crate that has like a random item on it from the cartel market, yeah, you might want to take a look at the Old Republic if you are concerned about how Anthem's going to be handled. I don't want to be a pessimist here. I don't want to be entirely cynical. I think it's been, on the flip side of what I'm saying, playing devil's advocate to my own position here, it's been a while since the Old Republic came out. And to their credit, in the time since it's come out, it has gotten better as a single-player experience. I've always wanted to play the Old Republic by myself. I've had a couple of friends who have played for brief stretches of time, and I've played with them periodically, and it's been a little bit of fun, but it's always like, okay, I want to play with you guys for a little bit, but mostly I want to play by myself, and I want to get lost in my own single-player role-playing experience. I've been able to do that better. Let's just say that. In BioWare's defense, they have gotten better. They've gotten more instanced areas, and the ability to play by yourself has gotten better and more seamless. I will give them credit for that. So again, I'm just going to base this based on evidence. I'm not saying that Casey Hudson's reassurances on this shouldn't be taken to have any value. I mean, he's the head of the studio. It has some value that he's saying that. I'm glad he's addressing these concerns, but I still put chief in my ranking of evidence the games that BioWare has actually released and developed in this space. So, the Old Republic, it's okay at having really strong story for a single player while being in a multiplayer world. Rhetoric is one thing, evidence is another. To that, however, in that mindset, we have to wait. Anthem's not out yet, and in fact, Anthem is going to be having a gameplay reveal. Again, I guess they've already had their gameplay reveal. We're going to see some more gameplay from Anthem at EA Play next month in June. Casey Hudson talks about that also in his blog post. That's the last thing we'll cover. He says that we're going to be seeing more of Anthem, and he says specifically, as to the folks like me who are sort of a little bit on the skeptical side about how they're going to blend strong central narrative and multiplayer, he says that they've got a way to handle it. Okay, so they say we've got some way to handle it. We've got a solution for this. He says they have a specific solution for this, and that they'll be sharing details on how it works very soon. So, we're presumably going to be learning about that more next month. I hope it's not as something as like, oh, well, let's drop in, drop out co-op, because that's not all that, sophisticated of a solution, but who knows? They might surprise me. They might come up with something that I've never even thought of before about how to blend these two worlds. And I'm optimistic. I'm on BioWare's side in the sense that I hope they succeed, and I hope they prove me wrong, because I would really love to play something that achieves all of that. So we'll find out next month. I will be back, hopefully before then. I know sometimes it takes me a while to get some videos out. I hate talking about meta stuff. Okay, I'm going to do it. I hate talking about meta stuff. You can stop the video right now. That's why I wanted to do it at the end. You can just stop. I hate talking about the channel itself. So whatever. Today, if I manage to actually post this today, it's the 1 year anniversary of the channel. So, whatever, confetti, etc. I've spent a lot of time writing about video games, trying to tell the truth about this medium in a way that is valuable to other people. I've probably succeeded a little bit and maybe failed a lot. I just try and tell the truth. I try and tell the truth in a way that's maybe entertaining, but mostly just valuable, just accurate. That's my aim anyway. I try to do that as best as I can. Occasionally, throughout all the writing that I've done, and throughout the year of this YouTube channel. I think I've succeeded a couple of times, and it's really humbling when people show appreciation for that. So to those of you who have subscribed, I know a little while ago I was noting that we crossed 500, and now it's almost up to 700, and that's it's a really small number in YouTube world. But for those of you that are subscribed and appreciative of what I'm trying to do with telling a little bit of truth as accurately as I can in the space of video games as an art, but also as a business, particularly as a business, because I don't think people talk about that as much. I appreciate that you're here. Tell your friends. Tweets and likes and shares on Reddit and whatever message boards you frequent are always appreciated. Really, I just appreciate the conversation. If you have something to say about what I've said, agree, disagree, etc., get down in the comments and let me know. That is always the thing that I take away and that I enjoy the most is the conversations. So yeah, it's been a year of doing this. I appreciate everyone's support. I will be back certainly when more Anthem information comes out. The podcast is still going to be coming out every 2 weeks, and hopefully I'll be making more videos as more information comes out about Anthem and about Dragon Age 4, and there's also potentially, as I mentioned, maybe a little bit of retrospective stuff coming on Mass Effect. So anyway, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, Masaranis, and until next time.